This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm John Buhler, staff writer, fansided.com. I'm joined today by a man whose team is one win away from bowling, who just saw Mac Brown beat his alma mater for the first time ever, and didn't have to deal with whatever the hell I did at the cocktail party. Cody Williams, content director, fansided.com. How the hell are you?
Every North Carolina football game is a cocktail party if you're doing it right, because that's the only way to really get through the season, man. But I'm doing good. It's been a long Saturday, and would venture to say a Saturday that neither of us really saw coming. Because holy hell, what a chaotic day we just had.
No, I saw somewhere that Carson Beck is the first quarterback in the SEC in 20 years to throw three-plus picks in two games and still won them both, and that happened back to back.
Dude, 100%. I believe Scott Rogus, our colleague, wrote a column for fansided.com today talking about like he's a Giants fan and like the Giants and Raiders obviously going to be in the quarterback market and about how they're probably hoping that Carson Beck's not going to go to either of their teams just because like I still like Beck's prospects long term as a quarterback, but he's not going to have the Georgia talent level, the Georgia defense to be able to bail him out when you're on the New York Giants or the Las Vegas Raiders.
I mean, I think I trust Brian Daboll to call plays over Mike Bobo, to be honest with
Oh,
you. But
100%. But still, like if you throw three picks for the New York Giants, you're already cooked because you know the defense is not going to help you out.
I mean, I think he would thrive playing for the IBM of the NFL. I think he would do so good playing for that franchise that still uses floppy disks. Get out of town here, man.
Absolutely. They still got the old MacBook or the not MacBook, what's the word? iMacs with like the colored backgrounds, like the big like yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
The files are in the computer.
Yeah, the Zoolander Max, that's what I'm talking about.
So I don't know if I'm going to start with the best actor slash model, but I'm going to run with this to start. I think we can officially add three teams to our college football playoff locks. Last week, I think it became apparent that Georgia and Texas are both going to get there just with what they have. Georgia essentially, they can afford a loss to Tennessee and Ole Miss as long as they beat Georgia Tech and they're in. And I think Texas, as long as they don't like lose to A&M, even if they lose to A&M, I think they're pretty much in at this point. But
Mhm.
I'm adding to the mix the Indiana Hoosiers, the Miami Hurricanes, and the Oregon Ducks. I did the math, so you don't have to. I don't see any way how those three teams don't make it at this point.
No, I really don't either. And like I'll start with Indiana because today was kind of a big statement by them. Like Michigan State is not a great football team, but there were a lot of questions about that game, and rightfully so. Like the ceiling of Michigan State is high. East Lansing has always been a tough place to play, and it already has proven to be that this year. Like we saw an Iowa team that's actually looked pretty decent since they made the move to Brendan Sullivan at quarterback, go into East Lansing and really, really struggle there. And for the first time this season, we saw Indiana trail. They were down 10-0 in the first quarter, and it looked like, okay, maybe this is, the time where Indiana falls back to earth. Then they score 47 unanswered points, and they didn't fall back to earth at all. They just beat the dog piss out of the Spartans. So like as our boy Chip Patterson likes to say at CBS Sports, smoke them through the filter because Coach Sig's boys aren't stopping playing for four quarters. And I mean, I think this team. What other questions do you have about Indiana at this point? Like, I understand the level of competition hasn't been what Penn State, what Ohio State, what Oregon have seen to this point, but at the same time, like they are dominating everybody they play
I mean, their closest win is like 17 points over Washington, like what, last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever
with a
that
backup
was.
quarterback. Yeah,
Yeah. So at this point, like Indiana's 9-0. They've got Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue left. They're not losing to Purdue. Purdue sucks.
yeah.
And even if you lose both Michigan and Ohio State, with the way that they beat up on everybody else, I mean, that's a more compelling. I mean, what's the difference between them and Penn State going 10-2 at that point? Like, I would, their 10-2 is much sexier. I'll tell you what, though, I feel like the Hoosiers are playing harder for Kurt Getty than like Steve Alford and Isaiah Thomas ever played for Bob Knight. It's
Oh, dude,
amazing what happens.
100%.
It's amazing what happens, how motivated you can be when you don't hit somebody.
Yeah, without the threat of violence, people tend to perform. It's crazy. I don't know. I don't really understand it, but shouts to the Indiana legacy, I guess. But to the other teams that you mentioned being now locks to get into the playoff along with Georgia and Texas. So Miami, I've got to give them their credit, man, because they trailed by 11 in the second half to Duke, and I still have questions about this Miami defense, but they might be able to outscore most teams that they play, man. Like that's just kind of what it is at this point. Cam Ward is that damn good. Damian Martinez in this run game are that damn good. Like it's just this team keeps finding ways to win. And for other teams, like if you were playing this many close games, I might look at it as a negative. But for Miami, it's a positive because of what we've seen from Mario Cristobal teams in the past. It's a positive because like this team has a fight and a moxie that has not been there before. Where, I feel like even last year, if Miami was down 11 in the second half to Duke, they're losing by 14 to 17. Like that's going to happen because those teams just seem to roll over at the worst possible times. This team does not have that in their DNA. And so you got to give them their credit. And especially with every team outside of SMU in the ACC kind of just, crapping the bed today, like Miami's the only team that hasn't crapped the bed outside of SMU in the ACC right now.
No, it's like with Miami, I think this was their best one of the season. I feel
Hmm.
like it was, you overcame adversity. And then it flipped on its head. I remember we were talking in Slack privately. It's like, oh my gosh, Mario's Marioing. And then I looked at him like, wait a second. The U's leading. Okay. And they didn't really look back. And Duke's pretty good. Duke, for
Hmm.
a new head coach in a new spot there, yes, maybe there's some sort of like Mike Elko carryover there, but like for Manny Diaz to already have Duke going to a bowl game, that's already a huge accomplishment at this point in
Oh
the
yeah.
season. As
Oh
far as
yeah.
Miami being 9-0, they've got Georgia Tech, I think Wake Forest, I believe, and then I think they end with Syracuse. So I mean,
Yeah.
like at that point, like you're not dropping two. If you drop
No.
one, you're still gonna get to Charlotte. And at that point, like it's guaranteed that Clemson or Pitt's gonna have a second loss and be out of it. Like that's an elimination game. I think here in either next week or in 2 weeks. And then obviously SMU looms large over there in Dallas. But like right now with Miami, mathematically, it's just not possible. They may not for them not to make it. Like they're going to either be like the 3 or 4 seed, or they're going to be somewhere in the 7 to 10 range. It's kind of what I feel like they're going to be this year. And Cam Ward might win. Cam Ward might win the Heisman. He looked really good today.
No, 100%. I think Cam Ward definitely made a statement in the Heisman race, especially with Dylan Gabriel not having his like he didn't play poorly today against Michigan, but he didn't have his best game. But yeah, Cam Ward looking like potentially the Heisman frontrunner. I haven't looked at the odds. I would be curious to see what they say after today. They tend to not really update fully until tomorrow afternoon anyway. But I do think that yeah, what you're saying, like Miami after what I saw today, like it's hard for me to see them losing any of those games. Like we talked about, Miami looks destined to trip up against someone. Maybe not, man. Maybe this team is just like has that DNA where you get them in a close game and it brings out the best in them. Because to this point, that's kind of what we've seen. Like whenever they get like a fire lit under their ass, they play like it. They don't just like get burned and then lie down and cry about it.
I'll go one step further with Miami here. Like I would take them probably over SMU, Clemson, or Pitt in the ACC championship right this instant. Assuming they get the 3 or 4 seed, like they'll play like SEC or Big Ten runner up at that point. I'm not ruling them out winning a first round game. I think they can win a quarterfinal. They seem to be comfortable in spots where a lot of teams aren't, and I think that's a really good skill that most other teams don't have.
No, 100%. And I think the other thing that stands out is like some of these games that they've been in that have been, a little hairy. Um, they've been different types of games. Like you look at the Cal game, you look at today's game even. It was a little sloppy. It wasn't like a pretty game. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing. You look like I about lost my mind early in the game because Cam Ward threw a touchdown pass and they were freaking out about what a great throw it was. It got tipped into Xavier Restrepo's hands by a defender. Like that's not a great throw. You almost got like should have been a pass defense and you just got lucky. Like that's not a great throw, but like Miami has been able, whenever, whether it's, a shootout like they were in with Louisville or whether it's, a game that gets kind of mucked up against the Manny Diaz or Justin Wilcox defense, they've still been able to survive. And so I think like their ability to adapt to whatever the game script demands is a really impressive skill that I think you're kind of alluding to there.
But was the shin down? That's the only thing I care.
Was it down? Who could say?
Who cares, man? I mean, it was fun. I guess it's like, yeah, let's give it to you. Why not? It looked cool. We'll give you that. We'll give you that. I'm like at this point, I'm like, I don't know. But
On
either
style
way,
points.
yeah. And I don't know if Oregon had style points today, but they're definitely a lock at this point, being 9-0. They have this end of the season with Washington. I think they play Maryland, and I think the other game is Wisconsin, if I, or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think it's in Camp Randall, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and at this point, like you've already played your toughest games. Although, Washington could be fighting for a bowl at that point. Although they're 5-4 now after beating USC, and that's not going so hot there in Los Angeles. But I don't know. Oregon was pretty quiet today. There was a lot
Hmm.
more interesting games on the slate. They took care of business, but you are right though. Gabriel not being super sharp there may knock him back in the Heisman race. Obviously, Colorado didn't play. That probably hurts Travis Hunter just by not being in there.
Hmm.
Ashton Jeanty was fine, but again, he needs to be better than fine at Boise State. And obviously, Cade Klubnik and Carson Beck are completely out of it. It's probably Dylan
Yeah.
Sampson at Tennessee at 5 at this point now.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. Big game for Dylan Sampson. We need to talk about Tennessee potentially being a lock because like they're not a lock, I don't think, but like at this point, it's going to be hard for them to miss out because where I'm sitting, I feel like Tennessee's probably still going to lose to Georgia. And even if that happens, they're not going to make the SEC championship game. But your two losses are not going like you're going to have a loss at Arkansas, you're going to have a loss to Georgia, but they're probably going to climb to number 5 or number 6 in the polls after this week. And with that happening, like I don't think a loss to Georgia is going to knock you out of that conversation. So like, is Tennessee almost a lock at this point? Not because they're necessarily like a surefire top 12 team in the country, but just by what the schedule is going to dictate.
They're in a group of a handful of teams that are almost locks. I ran through it real quick using FPI while you were wrapping up your shift and everything like that.
Hmm.
I think there's 27 teams that are still technically in it. This
Yeah,
includes like um the Raging Cajuns. Like essentially like they're still alive.
right.
But I think Tennessee, it just depends on like if you think that they're going to beat Vanderbilt. It's like they can't lose Georgia and Vanderbilt, essentially
Correct. Yeah.
where that is. Uh, Penn State's essentially a lock. They just can't lose another game, and then if they do, like they're not going to get to what? They're not going to get to Indianapolis. 10-2 may be good enough to get in.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ohio State, if they win out, they're pretty much getting in. Even if they lose to Indiana or Michigan, they're kind of in the Penn State group there.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that's like really SMU is pretty close. That's probably the other one where I'm like BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, Kansas State in the Big 12. There's still a lot to be decided there. Alabama, LSU, one will be pretty much eliminated after next weekend. Also, we're going after that game next
Hmm.
week.
You're forgetting the one team that I actually do think might be a lock.
Boise,
No, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
yes, that's another one too. Again, it's just like if they win out their end. I mean, even
Yeah,
like a second loss, it's pretty close too.
and it's really hard to see them losing a second game at this point because their finishing stretch, I was just looking at it earlier. I'm forgetting who it is now. I know they have Army and USC to finish, and I can't remember who they play next week, but it's no one good. Oh, Florida State. Yeah,
Yeah,
Florida State's next on their schedule. So like, are we scared of any of these teams that Notre Dame has to play? Like, Army's better than Navy, but Army is still not going to be able to hang with the athletes that Notre Dame is going to be able to put on the field. USC is dog water right now. They might not make a bowl game. So, like, I'm not scared of anyone else on. And, like, I think I wrote in the AP top 25 projections today, like, Marcus Freeman's team's having a letdown game. Not exactly the surest thing. Like, you can't, that's not exactly the most avoidable thing I've ever heard of, considering their one loss is to Northern Illinois on the season. But given what they've looked like since that game, it's hard for me to imagine them losing from here on out. And if they go
yeah,
11-1, they're a lock.
for sure. 10-2, we don't know because the A&M loss is worse now.
Yeah.
But like that's what I'm saying. Like Notre Dame, Tennessee, But Notre Dame, Tennessee, SMU, Notre Dame, Tennessee, SMU, BYU, Ohio State, Penn State, they're all like in that next tier. Like basically
Mhm.
like one more outcome like pretty much puts them in here this time we're talking next week or in 2 weeks. Like they're all kind of like they're knocking on the door.
No, I mean, when it comes to BYU, after what I saw in the Big 12 this week, I'm prepared for full chaos mode in that league. Like whoever's the conference champion is getting in and no one else is going to be close, quite frankly. And like based on what I've seen over the past like 2 or 3 weeks, it might be BYU and Colorado that are the two best teams in this conference, legitimately. And that's not me just blowing smoke up Colorado and Deion Sanders' ass. Like I think like what Colorado has been showing combined with what BYU did to UCF last week. Kansas State just lost to Houston. That team is pretty cheeks when they're pretty bad. And then Iowa State, Texas Tech is a good team. They're not a great team. They're a good team, but I thought Iowa State had been playing with fire a little too much and they got burned. So I mean that's going to happen, but I think we're going to see a lot of teams in the Big 12 get burned. Like I know Utah's been bad. Would you be shocked if BYU lost
No,
Holy War next week?
no, holy smokes. We'll definitely unpack K-State and Iowa State here a little bit. There's some interesting stuff there too. Yeah, I think that's good. I think probably of the teams that are almost a lock, the one that's probably the closest. You're right. It's Notre Dame. Notre Dame is probably the closest of the next, probably followed by Ohio State, I think, or Tennessee.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I would probably lean Ohio State just because like the win over Penn State is going to be such a feather in their cap because, like you said, if Penn State's as close to a lock as they are, and you have a pretty decisive win over them in Happy Valley, you lost to the an Oregon team that we believe is going to go undefeated and just waltz to Indianapolis at this point. Like, and you lost by 1 point in Eugene to them. Like, that resume is going to be really hard to push out of the college football playoff, even if they do lose to Indiana. Because if they lose to Indiana, there's a good chance Indiana's 12-0 as well. So their two
Yeah,
losses were to undefeated teams.
exactly. But if they're 10-2, then you're kind of like, okay, you're cutting it close, and Indiana's a lock at that point to go to
Hmm.
Indianapolis.
Yeah.
We're gonna break my brain here pretty soon. I don't know how you're gonna do that. It's gonna be very interesting how we're doing this with this new thing. But in the meantime, what do you want to run with?
So I'm running, of course, with the live dog, the pissing king, our running man hero, Diego Pavia, who will not be denied, who will not effing lose to Hugh Freeze ever because
No,
he just keeps beating the man while he's down. Diego Pavia didn't even play well today, bro.
no.
He was 9 of 22 passing. That's awful. That's truly horrendous stuff right there. And he still went out there and we talked about it like on Thursday's show. Why was Vanderbilt a 7 point underdog in this game? Did not make a lick of sense. And they proved it on the field. 17-7. The defense stepped up, really limited everything Peyton Thorne wanted to do. Diego Pavia and Cedric Alexander made the plays when they needed to. And dude, just shouts to Vandy. Like we'll give them their full bowling treatment on Monday, but going to a bowl game, and I think their over under win for total for the season was at 3.5. So like just blowing that out of the water, and Diego Pavia is the reason why.
The crazy part is if they do finish 9-3, they're going to the playoff, even with the loss to Georgia State, which is so bad now. But
The freaking Panthers, my God.
hold on, I gotta take this real quick.
Oh no.
Hola. No, no. See, I don't know how you keep doing this. Okay, okay. No. Okay, 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 fine. Bulldog. Okay, bye.
How's our boy? How's Antonio doing?
So again, he just decides like this year we've just had a really bad luck of where we're going. He just chooses to basically follow Diego Pavia, and he has like they have like the bat signal. It's the Antonio signal. It's just
Hmm.
just I don't know what it is. It's a
It's a
bucket.
bachelorette party, a silhouette.
It just says birthday on it, and he goes. So he left Albuquerque, was really happy to see Jay Sawville actually win something. Felt really bad for Bronco and all. He was going to hang out with him, but Bronco needs to go survive under a bridge somewhere. So Antonio found Oski the bear, or the bear he named Oski, and then just rode from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Auburn, Alabama, and he is partying with Diego Pavia.
Him and his furry tractor, it's how it is all the time. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think. When is the last time we've had like truly a character like Diego Pavia? Like, I know Diego Pavia's been playing in Mexico State, but he's not been in the Power Four. He's not been in the SEC. He's not been in this big of a spotlight previously. When's the last time we had a character like Diego Pavia really kind of just like, is that like, I think, it's election season. We'll put it this way. Does anyone have a higher approval rating in college football than Diego Pavia right now? Because I can't think of anybody that's even remotely close.
No, like I'm trying to think like what's similar. Like there have been other quarterbacks and players throughout college football history, but Stetson Bennett wasn't like this liked, but there's a certain Stetson Bennett kind of quality that Diego
Yeah,
Pavia has.
100%.
I would say like probably Lamar Jackson when he was at Louisville is probably probably the closest thing I could think of.
Yeah, no, I think it's almost like I think actually Stetson might even be a closer comparison, even though I think Diego Pavia probably gets a little more love because he doesn't play for a Georgia, frankly. But like I do think that, the kind of cult hero status, like I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like Lamar was very mainstream, but this is more like you just gotta love the guy because like there's a lot of reasons why he shouldn't be good at football, why he shouldn't be leading Vanderbilt to a bowl game. Like he's undersized, he's not the best thrower of the football in the world, and like there was talks that he might not even be the starter for Vanderbilt because of the way he was doing, like way he was performing in like fall practice. Like that was a legitimate conversation coming into this season. And lo and behold, you get him out on the football field, and dude just knows how to win football games, much like Stetson Bennett, who, there were a lot of reasons why Stetson Bennett should not have been a two-time national champion and two-year starter at Georgia, and yet he was, and he won, and he kept winning a lot of football games.
I'm still trying to think who this is, like Jared Lorenzen maybe, but yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
Jared Lorenzen's a really good call because like unlike Stetson, like obviously Vanderbilt's not really in the national title conversation. Let's be clear about
yeah,
that. Like we're very happy for Vanderbilt and Clark Lee and our boy Parton Simmons, but like, you know, let's be realistic. You lost to Georgia State. We know what your floor is in this world, but yeah, Jared Lorenzen's a really good comp. Like just some like you almost unanimous approval rating, someone who when they get hot, they can beat you and like there's a lot of reasons why they shouldn't be good, but yet they are.
I have another guy who's like this too, another SEC legend, Stephen Garcia.
Dude, Steven Garcia, yes. Kind of like my vibe curator, frankly.
The he won more than Jay Cutler in college. It's just the
hmm
same. Showed up to the game with a shiner and a hickey and a half lit cigarette. He's ready to go, brother.
100%. We're ready to ride.
But like we're gonna have to rename. I mean, it's the Jim Leahy slot award. Just when we do the sleeveys, it's going to Diego Pavia. Like, I almost want to put him in the slot again. Like I don't think anybody else even deserves to go in there this year. It just belongs to Diego Pavia.
It's the Diego Pavia Jim Leahy Memorial Slot Award at this point. Like it's just going to be renamed after him.
I'm gonna keep this to myself. That was rated R. But that was not a good thing in my head. Um, trying to think of. Never mind. No, never mind. Anything else with the live dog or the
So
Chumbawamba of the Cumberland?
so kind of tying our two runs together. What are the chances do you think of Vanderbilt actually upsetting Tennessee? Because I mean, at this point, is it out of the question?
I think they're gonna do it,
You think
and
so? Okay.
I think they're gonna ruin Tennessee's playoff chances. I think potentially just because like I feel that like if the game with Georgia was in Knoxville, that would probably go in Laval's favor. They're going to be up for that. And for whatever reason, I just feel maybe I'm just a simpleton at this point. I just kind of feel Beck's not going to like overlook it. And I, plus also like Tennessee can't score.
Yeah, 100%. I will say Nico played one of his best games in SEC play tonight. Granted, that was only 292 yards, one touchdown, no interceptions. That's good. Congratulations. 28 to 38. So like maybe the offense is starting to come around, but at the end of the day, like Vanderbilt's defense has shown it can show up against good offenses, and Tennessee's still not a good offense at this point. Dylan Sampson's very good. I like Dylan Sampson quite a bit, but I still don't trust Nico. I trust Diego Pavia a lot more than I trust Nico. But I do wonder, like, I mean, Tennessee's defense is still legit and probably more legit than Alabama, probably more legit than Texas, potentially, and definitely more legit than Auburn because most things are more legit than Auburn at this point.
I will tell you, man, the final three games for Vanderbilt. Oh my God, that is brutal. They host South Carolina, they go to LSU, and then they host Tennessee. That sucks.
Oh God, yeah, I don't think they're. I don't. I think we can write them out of the playoff. I don't think 9-3 is happening, brother.
If they do, though, they're going because that's
Oh,
amazing.
100%, 100%. I just have a hard time seeing it at this point.
And even though we are probably going to cross Vanderbilt off, we're going to cross three teams off from making the playoff right now. That is going to be my pass. We are going to officially cross off Clemson, Kansas State, and Texas A&M. It may be a tad premature, but all three of these losses for these teams this week felt different than every other one. And it's there's probably different flavors and machinations of how we feel about that, but like that's I don't see how it happens. So I'm gonna start with Clemson real quick.
Mhm.
You have two losses. You've lost to Georgia badly, and then you lost to Louisville, where the score it was a bigger beatdown than what the score indicated. Clemson kind of came
Mhm.
back. That's like the other team you played who's good.
Mhm.
Or Georgia might be better than good, but like
Yeah, but you know, I let me jump in here. Like Clemson, hand up, like Clemson fooled me because since that Georgia game, they had been running amok over every team they played. Offense looked better. Defense is Clemson's defense. We know what to expect from Clemson's defense. And this Louisville game was, as we mentioned on Thursday, kind of the point to like, okay, prove to us that you're back. And they didn't prove a damn thing. The defense, Jeff Brom diced it up. Jeff Brom, big game Jeff Brom. We got to remember big game Jeff Brom in these moments, man, because no one game plans for a matchup like this like Jeff Brom. And he just took it to him. And like, I think it once again shows to me that Dabo Sweeney as a CEO type, has kind of lost the plot. Garrett Riley is overhyped as an offensive coordinator. And since losing Brent Venables, this Clemson defense does not have the ceiling that it once did.
I'm trying to like watch this game. It wasn't like well, first off, film off, I had a lot of yards. I was trying to say, like,
Hmm.
what's like the deciding factor here? And then it's like, I mean, Klubnik played okay, but he didn't like separate or elevate. And I think that's kind of really, I think he just lacks the dog to do that. And I don't know if Tyler Shuck really does, but he seems to be a little more comfortable playing in those sort of situations that Cade Klubnik does. Maybe because
Well, he's
he's also,
30.
yeah, he's 30, but yeah.
He's a grown ass adult playing in this game.
But so you've got two losses, you've got one in ACC play. Your remaining schedule is not easy. Again, you've got four games left where most people have three. I think it's about probably more have three left than four, but that's kind of neither here nor there. You got to play Pitt, and even though Pitt looked like S,
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
I've seen Pitt just dismantle people. Like
Mhm.
what they did to Syracuse is still fresh in my mind. SMU just is a whole other animal at this point too, with Kevin Jennings at quarterback. And then you got to play South Carolina. Yeah, good luck with that ass, man.
Oh, dude, Cade Klubnik might piss his pants during the South Carolina game, given what I just watched them do to Texas A&M tonight. Yeah, but so yeah, I just don't see it for Clemson. I don't see, like, frankly, I think they probably beat Pitt. I've been getting more skeptical of Pitt. Like, you look at that Syracuse game, and yes, what the defense did was impressive, but prior to that game, it had been a lot of kind of offensive fireworks that had been carrying them. Those offensive fireworks are fizzling out pretty spectacularly right now. So, like, if you can't score against Clemson, then I don't know what you're going to be able to really accomplish against them. And I don't know if, with what Pitt's offense has looked like of late, I don't know if they're going to be able to score on Clemson.
Kind of makes you wonder if Eli Holstein's hit a wall and they put
Hmm.
Nate Yarnell in there at some point to kind of like mix it up.
Potentially, but at the same time, like Holstein's so young that like that's your future right there. And so like you don't
Yeah,
want to Anthony Richardson him like the Colts are because that's the worst run organization in professional sports, in my opinion. Like my God, sorry, tangent there. But no, like I think like you got to stick with Holstein. I think Pitt, the fact that Pitt was 18th, ranked 18th, undefeated coming into this game kind of tells me that the AP voters and kind of the general public just didn't respect Pitt. And frankly, they might have been right to do so.
that's fair. I'm gonna stay on your tangent. I got a Colts take to take. I'm a fellow Colts hater too.
Let's go.
We've talked about this before, privately in one-on-ones and stuff like that, just about like managerial philosophies and everything. Okay, for the record, Cody's my boss. He can fire me. It's fine. Um, there's certain types of leadership that I respond to and not, but one thing that I really have a hard time with at 35 years old is I don't really respect people who can do their job with and operate without consequence.
Hmm.
Like at this point, like I feel like we've all worked too hard to have any of that happen. And I don't think there's anybody in professional sports who operates more without consequence than Chris Ballard.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I mean, like, I was listening to, I believe it was the Ringer Fantasy Football show the other day, and they were like running down the Colts seasons, and it's been so erratic. Like, they've had multiple double-digit win seasons, but they've also had multiple double-digit loss seasons, and then like a couple 9-8s or 8-9s sprinkled in there. And it's just like, good organizations are built on consistency. Like you can say what you want about Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, but there is something to be said with the fact that you're never awful. You know what I mean? Like that's like institutional integrity. And like there is none of that in Indianapolis. And then you look at this Anthony Richardson situation, which I mean, it's just so asinine and backwards. I don't think it's wrong to bench Anthony Richardson after he quit on the team during the middle of a game because he was tired. Like, if you're benching a young player to teach him a lesson, that's one thing. Every indication is that's not what this is. Every indication is that, like, oh, Joe Flacco gives us a better chance to win. Yeah, but you knew that when you drafted Anthony Richardson. And Shane Steichen said he wanted Anthony Richardson to play because he wanted to develop him. You can bench him for 1 week and like to teach him a lesson, but that's not what they're doing. It sounds like he could be benched for the entire season, which is just asinine as it can possibly be.
I mean, you're not that far away from the Texans. I mean, the Jaguars, who you can never beat in Duval, they haven't beaten them in Duval since we started writing for Fansided.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, they haven't won a division since then, since
Hmm.
Deflategate or whatever. But it's just like just because he's like in the Midwest with a Southern accent, was in Wisconsin. It's just like is he just how far is the wool put over Jim Irsay's eyes? I know Jim Irsay, like there's stuff about him that's like been like not good, but for the most part, like his career as an owner and executive, also SMU booster, probably having a great time right now tonight.
Oh, 100%. He's probably trying to save
He
another whale.
for sure. In between saving whales, like for every five whales he saves, he only saves three. So for the most part, it's like that's how he is as a general manager. He's a 600. He's our head our owner. 60%. He's in the slot right there.
100%. 60% of the time it works every time.
Okay, so let's just get out of Indianapolis because when we're going to go, that's another team we got to put on. We're going to punt on making the playoff. That's got to be Kansas State at this point.
Yeah.
The second loss here, with it being to Houston, who's not good, and with how badly you looked versus BYU, Colorado is now ahead of you to
Hmm.
get to Arlington, and then you still got to play Iowa State at Farmageddon in the season, and whoever loses that game's completely out of it. I'd probably take the Clones over K State at this point because again, it's one of those things where, like I want Avery Johnson to do more, and he's just not ready.
No, he's quite clearly not ready. And like I think tonight really highlighted that because tonight would have been the type of game where you think Avery Johnson would shine. It's rainy, ugly game, like just a sloppy game all around because of the conditions, the weather that was going on. You don't need Avery Johnson to throw it around the yard, which is not his strength to begin with. You just need him to kind of use his legs to his advantage and to Kansas State's advantage. And he couldn't do that. Like if he's going to be a difference maker, it has to be right now with his legs. And if he's not making a difference against a team like Houston, like that's a huge, huge issue for this Kansas State team. I mean, frankly, they should have lost to Colorado when they won that game. Like that was a very close game. Travis Hunter missed half of that game with an injury. So like you probably shouldn't have won that game, and we shouldn't even have been in this position to begin with. I dropped Kansas State completely out of the top 25 after this loss because like you can't lose to Houston and be a top 25 team in my opinion.
No, you can't. This is Willie Fritz's first year. They're starting to kind of figure it out there. Ever since the TCU game, they're 4-5. They could still go to a bowl game, which would be unbelievable given the circumstances. That'd be very impressive. Just shows how
Oh
good of
yeah.
a coach Willie Fritz is. But then you go to the other side of it with Iowa State losing to by a point to Texas Tech, like Baron Morton Salt. Yeah, he's pretty good. And
Yeah.
Joe McGuire trusts him. And it's the same thing with Matt Campbell and Rocco Beck. Like it's pretty fair. It's a pretty evenly matched thing.
hmm
And I don't really care who Houston's quarterback is. Avery Johnson, you should be winning this game, and you're not.
It's Zion Chris and Avery Johnson. You should be winning this game.
That's right. That's right. It's Deion Chris. They've been playing better since they went to him. There we
That's
go.
right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, Willie Fritz, I was high on the hire because I think he is a damn good coach. And I think Houston's kind of proving that. They've improved with each passing week. So like I don't want to diminish Houston to make my point about Kansas State, but like Kansas State should beat Houston. Like I'm not, breaking news by saying that. That shouldn't be a game that they lose. And speaking of games that you shouldn't lose, you probably shouldn't beat LSU in the way that you did last week if you're Texas A&M, and then go on the road and get your ass handed to you by the Gamecocks.
Wow, what did Jesse Palmer tell me many years ago? Never trust A&M.
Dude, like I thought we talked last week about how it was a program defining win for Texas A&M to beat LSU. This is a program indicative loss of what Texas A&M is. The fact that every high is met with an equally low low. Like that's what Texas A&M has been under Jimbo Fisher. And frankly, it's going to take a lot more than half a season for Mike Oko to wash that away from the program because that is a cultural thing that just happens at Texas A&M at this point.
I'm watching that game, and it was close there for a while, and then
hmm
when it got to 30-20, then it got out of hand. I wrote about this for fanside.com. We talked about Neil Brown being on the hot seat. Now Colin Klein should be the guy to go there. He's our peer. He's a college football legend. I felt like he was like a pilot in the cockpit and the plane's going down and there's not much he
hmm
could do. He looked really nervous up there.
Yeah.
And I guess I mean, like LSU barely beat South Carolina. I mean, so did what Alabama barely beat them too. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Alabama barely beat them. Ole Miss beat excuse me, beat the crap out of them. I'll bleep that out during, when we get going. But
Yeah,
Ole Miss beat the absolute pants off of them, 27-3. But that's their only like bad loss. Like LSU, I believe that was 36-33, come from behind for LSU, and then Alabama barely a 27-25, I think was the final of that one. So like they played a lot of these teams close.
absolutely. And I'm not gonna make you bleep this out, but like, I don't know. It's just like South Carolina is a different effing animal, man. Like, there's no other team
Yeah.
like them in college football. I was sitting there, I'm like, this is a really good team. I don't think they're gonna go to a bowl game, but now that they beat A&M, you got to beat Wofford, and you're gonna get to 6-6. I think you still got to be. You're probably. I take them over Clemson at this point. I think they're just
Mhm.
more tough. They're tougher. And honestly, like Shane Beamer's getting a raise
Oh
because
yeah.
otherwise he's gonna go
He's
to
he's gonna get a new job if
at
he doesn't get a
Oklahoma.
raise. Yeah.
It is cool to see his dad in the sideline there watching him cheer it on. That's pretty good.
100%.
But yeah, I'm sitting there with A&M like I think I had them as a lock last week. It's just amazing how quickly it turns because I didn't see this coming. But we saw the line and it opened up my eyes and we saw the line that they were only favored by 2.5 on the road at Williams Brice, and that place is scary as Hess. It's
Yeah, it
sandstorm,
is.
it's roosters crowing, they're slinging towels, and it's hot as Hess here.
Oh yeah, 100% humidity. That's just life in Colombia for sure.
Dude, it could like the sun gets set there, it's 95 degrees.
Dude, 100%. It's
It's
terrible.
dude, it's like living in a butthole.
It really is. It really, really is. In more than one way too, like quite frankly. But no, like, okay. Now with Texas A&M, like we're ready to write them off because like I would still like even after last week, I would probably still have favored Texas over Texas A&M in the season finale just because like I think the little brother running away from big brother syndrome that we've seen with that rivalry, I think is just going to favor Texas, even with the game being in College Station. Now, if they lose that game, there's no shot. And even if you win that game, there's still like, you kind of still need a little bit of help to make it work. And so, like, I do think, and one thing that was brought up about, I heard, I can't even remember who it was, but it was brought up to me on Friday after we had already recorded on Thursday, was how much should we really trust Texas A&M because of the LSU game? Because when you look at what happened in that LSU game, the biggest thing was that change to Marcel Reed and what the offense looked like after that. But how much of that was LSU just not being prepared for that? How much of it was just being caught on your back foot and not being able to get back on your front foot after Marcel Reed comes in the game with a completely different look at quarterback? South Carolina not only had the entire week to prepare for Marcel Reed, they see it every day in practice because they have Lenora Sellers as their quarterback. So like it's something they're expertly prepared for. So like when you look at it through that lens, is it really that shocking that they got beat down in the way that they did?
No. I'll add this. This is a very, it's not a program defining loss. It just says like you still have ways to go to clean the Jimbo Fisher snake oil there, which is absolutely just festering like toxic sludge there in Happy Valley. James Franklin is just a ball out of control, dude. He he is just he's so evil. All of his hair ran away from him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
Dude.
mean, shouts to the exact same Ohio State Penn State game we've seen for 4 years in a row that we watched again today. Like what the hell, man?
Oh no, but I'll end this part before we punt
Yeah.
this. I
Got to
pass
punt
before
it
we
away,
punt.
baby.
Gotta punt it away. When do you think about Texas A&M and South Carolina? This was the cross divisional there for about 10 years because once Battle Line came in, they decided to make that a thing like fetch and
Mhm.
just it didn't. So then South Carolina's like, well, who are we going to play? And Ames like, well, who are we going to play? So they played each other. It's like Remus and Huron. They're brothers by last name and proximity.
That's right. Yeah, not by their actions.
But you think about it from this perspective, like these programs recruited at the top 15 level year in and year out. I feel that like because A&M maybe they just want it more, they want it more badly, and they can just drill baby drill. They kind of they attract a certain type of person who wants the bag, kind of in a way. Like they like I don't understand it. Like it's like why would you want to go there? You're gonna win maybe 10 games this year. Whereas South Carolina, like they would if they had an opportunity to go play at Georgia, at Tennessee, even Florida, like they'd probably take that over South Carolina. So I think that that builds character in a way that like shows up on the field when they've got the right players there. Like they've had talent, but like there always seems to kind of be a ceiling with that. Even with Spurrier, Spurrier is kind of like my way or the highway. You'll fit in or not. But like Beamer maybe cuts through in some manner to reach those guys in a way that like nobody at A&M ever has or ever will.
No, I'm gonna use a very convoluted analogy, but I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's like Texas A&M is the guy who buys an $80,000 car, has like a ridiculous engine. I'm not a car guy, so I'm not going to try to use any fancy car terms, but like, has a really expensive car, puts a lot of money into it to make it fast, goes out and tries to race it. South Carolina is the guy who bought a $5,000 beater and put in his blood, sweat, and tears into make it a good car and also knows how to drive. And Texas A&M, they don't know how to drive. And like that's kind of what I'm looking at like these two teams, these two programs as.
Texas A&M's the guy who's making bank and has $1,000 a month car payment, and he's laughing at the guy in South Carolina driving a Toyota, knowing his portfolio is worth 500K.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I don't know if the South Carolina is ready to retire, but we're getting there too. We need to we need to punt. So
Yes.
we came up with four teams that we're going to punt on making conference title bouts, their conference championships, who played this week because we don't know.
Mhm.
That would be Georgia, that would be Iowa State, that would be Ohio State, and that would be Tennessee. I,
Yeah, so let's start with Georgia. I'll just start with this, Bueller. What were your feelings throughout the cocktail party today? Because I can't imagine they were the most fun of feelings and the lowest of stress.
Well, first off, shout out to the Arizona State podcast and Arizona State going bowling. We'll talk about that here on Monday. But
That's
like,
right.
she goes out to like a colleague's party, Stone Mountain, a little bit further away from where we're at here at Virginia Highland. And I'm like, I'm really glad she's not here right now because like I'm not in a good mood and nobody needs to be around me at this point. The first two interceptions that Beck threw were atrocious. The third was still really bad, but it was kind of like he got. I can understand that, but given like
Yeah.
the manner of it all, then it's like I felt so bad for Lagway, like tearing his
Hmm.
hamstring.
Yeah.
Then they go in with I don't even remember what the guy's name was. I think it's Warner,
Yeah,
Aiden
Warner.
Warner, Aiden
The
Warner. I
kid the
think,
kid from Yale. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, whose parents went to Florida. He's going to start the rest of the year because Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway are now out.
That's yeah, tough for Billy Napier given that this is the start of their brutal end of the season stretch that they have.
I mean, this puts the Florida State game in jeopardy, but at this point, like with what he's had to go through, I don't see how you could fire him from like an ethical standpoint. I mean, it's just like there's some points. I mean, yes, I would love him to keep coming back so Georgia can keep kicking his ass in Jacksonville, but like, I mean, you lost to Georgia by 14 points in the game. You probably should have won. You outplayed Georgia for 3.5 quarters,
Hmm.
and all of your losses at this point have been to teams who are probably going to make the playoff.
Yeah.
Maybe not A&M, but like you're right there. Yeah, it's
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you that from like an ethical, from a moral standpoint, it's a really bad look to fire Billy Napier at this point. It is the Florida Gators we're talking about, so ethical and moral don't really go that hand in hand there.
like they fire him. What he's going to do is he's going to go work for Lane Kirby or Sark. Like it's pretty
Oh,
obvious.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And they'll be happy to have him, as they should be. Like, Billy Napier is not a bad coach. He's not.
No,
I think he's proven that time and again this season. Like, he was down to third stringers across the board, and he still had Florida fighting for their lives against Georgia today.
they're playing really hard for him. But I guess to kind of take it back with Georgia, I mean, like when we do this on Monday, like I'm gonna have them at 2 probably because like they're the favorite out of the SEC. Georgia's the best second half team in college football. They're terrible in the first half, but they turn it on the second half. And when they decide to run the football, good night. And when the defense, also I think having like Aguero and Dan Jackson out for the first half was just horse ass. Like for the
Hmm.
targeting, it really limited what they could do. But I would say like I think Georgia's going to get to Atlanta, but like you got Ole Miss and Tennessee. They're probably going to lose one of those two games. I'm just maybe both.
Yeah.
And as long as they beat Georgia Tech and UMass, they'll get to the playoff because the schedule's not tough, and they have to head to head over Texas and Clemson and what have you.
No, 100%. I think like the playoff isn't really in jeopardy. It's really more, are they going to get to Atlanta? And like, coming off the bye, Ole Miss looked pretty damn scary today. At Arkansas, hanging 63 on what an Arkansas defense that has shut down a lot of good offenses so far this season. Like Ole Miss might be back to humming a little bit. So that game just got a lot more interesting next week. But yeah, like I think it really comes back to something I said after the Alabama loss. And like, you talk about them being a better second half team. Mike Bobo calls a different game in the second half. He starts playing with pace. He starts no huddling, even if it's not fast. Like it's not, peak Josh Heupel Tennessee fast or anything like that, but it is, a faster pace. Beck looks so much more comfortable in those looks when he's not like giving the defense time to read what he's about to do and what this offense is about to do. And like, I'm begging Mike Bobo to just come out of the locker room in the first quarter, running tempo. Please, for the love of God, for the sake of your quarterback and the sake of your national championship hopes, do this.
I'm just going to leave this. I'm going to say this one last thing about Georgia before we go on our next team because I don't want to be in a bad mood before I go to bed. Rule
Okay,
number one in
okay.
life: don't be in a bad mood when you go to bed. First offensive series of the game. It was like 3rd and 9 or 3rd and long or 3rd and 5 or something like that. rather than just do like an easy like 10-yard completion to keep the sticks going, they throw it deep and Beck doesn't complete it. And I'm like, well, that's gonna get in his head. That's gonna get in his
Mhm.
head. And it absolutely did because he's like, okay, I can't throw the deep ball. I don't have it today. And he was shaky with like some of his decision making and stuff like that. Granted, Florida's got talent. They're flying around there.
Mhm.
All over defensively. They played a hell of a game, all things considered. But like that play call to go deep, take a deep shot is just cocky and stupid. And honestly, let's not do that with Beck because I don't think he's cocky or stupid. I just feel that like he's you're messing with his head, Bobo. Please stop.
Yeah, I mean, legitimately, I think this is all a Mike Bobo problem, quite frankly. Like, it just comes down to the man calling the plays. I do have a question for you, and I don't think this will put you in a bad mood, but is Fraser y'all's best running back? Because to me, he looks better than Trevor Etienne right now.
He it's I'll give a perfect analogy here. It's like having Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier.
Okay, okay. I like that.
Bijan Robinson is Trevor Etienne, where it's like he's your feature guy. You can put him out there, you can trust him. He'll make some plays. But when you need to like just because our team's playing like later today, like Eastern time.
Don't remind me.
When you see Tyler Algier out there, it's like Larry Allen going choo choo, just
Yep.
coming down to run you over. Nate Frazier may weigh like a buck 75. I don't know if he can pass pro, but like when he get that ball in his hands, it's different. I haven't seen
Hmm.
this out of a Georgia running back probably since Chubba Gurley, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of no Sean. We
Mm.
haven't had a player like that in a while. Maybe James Cook at his peak, but that's about it.
I like the no Sean comp. I can
Yeah.
see that a little bit. That's a good one. But yeah, I mean, like it feels like he has kind of this FU energy whenever he runs the ball a little bit, and like you said, he may weigh a buck 70, but like he doesn't care. Like he doesn't care if it's a 230 linebacker coming down at him. He's gonna take him head on and like try to run you over. And it's I mean, it's just I feel like whenever he's getting the bulk of the carries, this offense just has a little more juice to it.
It does. And still trying to figure out where the juice is there with Iowa State.
I don't think
I,
they
d-
have Juice Brother.
I mean, Beck's good and Hanson's good, but I'm like looking for that receiver like the Alan Lazard or the Charlie Kolar at tight end that really opens it up. We know the defense is going to be good, but the fact that they don't have that leaves them susceptible to losing games like this to Texas Tech.
No, I think Iowa State's biggest issue is stems from exactly what you're talking about. I don't think they have a high ceiling. I think they have an extremely high floor. I think their floor is extremely high, but you look at a team like Texas Tech, who is able to play not great defense, but solid defense, and has a good, well-rounded offense. Like they have weapons at wide receiver. They have Taj Brooks in the backfield. They have Morton at quarterback, who, like you said, Joey McGuire trusts. And when you have a team that is equally as well put together, they're susceptible to lose to them. Like if you have a team that doesn't have like a very defined weakness, Iowa State can lose to them. That doesn't mean they're going to because they, like you said, they have Beck, they have a great coach in Matt Campbell. So like they can also win those games, but they're also going to be susceptible to losing those games. And then like I think they are exemplary of everything we've said about the Big 12. Like most of these teams, actually any of these teams can lose to any of these teams at any given moment. And like Iowa State is the perfect example of that because like for a lot of teams like Kansas State, Colorado, Cincinnati, you look at the variance and there's just wild swings in either direction. And Iowa State's like the median of that. They're just always in the middle. And like if you catch a team on the downswing, they're going to beat the piss out of you. If you catch them on the upswing, it's going to be a close game because Iowa State's going to bring you down to that median a little bit. So like they're just in that median and that's not going to be enough to get you to the playoff. And it might not be enough to get you to the Big 12 championship game at this point.
They got a tough schedule here. And then they got Kansas State. I think they got to play I think I looked this up. I think they got to play Cincinnati and Arizona State. I feel like they've got those two teams left, if I'm not
I think you're
mistaken.
right. I think you're right. They have of the teams like in the Big 12 title race, I think they have the toughest remaining slate. Yeah, they play Kansas at Kansas next week. Kansas stinks. So I'll give them that one. Cincinnati in Ames. And then they got to go to Rice Eccles, which again, Utah's not very good this year, but Rice Eccles is still a very tough place to play, playing at elevation late in the season. And then you get Farmageddon. So like, yeah, that's a brutal stretch in the Big 12.
Yes. I think I'll say this with Iowa State. It's like almost by default, like I don't think I'm having the top 12, but I'm still gonna have them lurking in the top 16 just because of
Mhm.
like the Big 12 of it all. I still think they're really well coached. I guess I'll throw this back to you before we move on to Ohio State. If Matt Campbell, I guess the two parts of this. So Rocco Beck's only a sophomore. Let's just say that, Matt Campbell wants to stay for as long as Rocco Beck's here, then he'll go. Maybe that's when Michigan will open up at some point.
Mhm.
Is Iowa State capable of taking advantage of the power void? And if he does leave at some point, like, will he be able to recruit beyond the weapons limitations we've seen to run into at Iowa State?
So if he were to leave, I don't have any doubt that he'll be able to recruit at that level because when he's had the opportunity to get those guys to Iowa State, he's been able to do it. Look at like a Xavier Hutchinson. You look at I'm totally blanking on the kid's name. He sucked in the NFL, but totally can't remember his name, but Charlie Kolar on top of that. Like, he's when he's had the chance to get those weapons who are local products, he's been able to go get them. So if you have a more national recruiting base than Iowa State's going to have, I have full confidence in him with those resources to be able to go and get those guys. So to answer the second part of your question, I have no doubts about what Matt Campbell could do at a larger job with more opportunity. At Iowa State, if he's to stay there with Beck, I think the big key to like taking that power void would be how he operates in the transfer portal. And I think it's key for him to use the transfer portal to Iowa State's advantage and his advantage and be like, hey, look what I've been able to do with guys who, when I've gotten them here and into my system with good quarterback play, look what they've been able to do. They've been able to go on and be day two draft picks. Like they've gone on to have relatively successful NFL careers, or at least get to the NFL and get those paychecks. And I can do that for you. If you look at like, I don't know who the fifth wide receiver on Ohio State's depth chart is, but I guarantee you it's probably better than Iowa State's number one right now. So like go talk to that guy and see if you can get him to Iowa State. Like I know I'm encouraging tampering here. Tampering happens. That's just the reality of the situation. So like I think how he attacks the transfer portal is going to be really key into what Iowa State's ceiling is in the new Big 12.
People tamper, people cheat on their taxes, people gamble on sports, and this is false.
That's right.
And speaking of a team that hits the portal pretty good, let's go on to our second to last team with Ohio State. This is pretty simple. If they win out, they're going to get to
Hmm.
Indianapolis because they'll have the head-to-head tiebreaker over Indiana and Penn State. Doesn't matter what Oregon does. There's the only four teams still in it in the Big Ten. I don't even know who the fifth is. It doesn't even matter. There's not one.
No, there's really not at this point because
But
Illinois lost to Minnesota today. So like Illinois is out of that conversation.
maybe it's Minnesota, maybe it's Iowa.
Yeah, honestly, like who knows?
It's got to be Iowa because I think they won Floyd. So maybe yeah, it's got to be
Yeah,
them.
yeah, there we go. The
Yeah,
Hawkeyes, who'd
the
have thunk it?
Hawkeyes, Brandon Sullivan. That's crazy. What a time to be alive. How 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 are the Glizzers, Brian?
Dude, they're electric. One
I
bite
looked up.
only.
I looked up why it's called that. It's apparently slang for like a Glock, and it looks like that. That's why. Didn't know that.
Of course.
Of course it is. But so Ohio State's I think they got Northwestern. They're gonna win that game.
Yeah, Northwestern's
But
terrible.
they won today, but they're not very good. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Also Nebraska. What the hell are you doing?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Nebraska might not make a bowl game. We can talk about that on Monday. What? You lost to UCLA. What are you doing?
Maybe Deshaun Foster does keep his job. I think he's got an employee at heart. I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't think he's gonna get fired right now. It's fine. I would take him off the
No.
hot seat. But I would say with Ohio State, like you gotta win. I don't. I mean, you got to beat Indiana or Michigan. I feel like you can't. You if you win both, you get in. If you split, you're right there. It's close. You'd be ahead of Penn State. But if Penn State goes 11-1, and you're 10-2.
Mhm.
How sure are you that all four teams are going to get in out of the Big Ten? Maybe because the SEC is not looking super hot, but Yeah, I still think that the SEC has 8 teams still technically in it if you want to count A&M and Mizzou.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, I understand that beating Penn State is a big win. I understand that Penn State is a very good football team and a team that I thought was going to win today. I'm foolish for thinking James Franklin has that in him because he clearly does not. But I'm not walking away from this game still feeling great about Ohio State. Like, Will Howard did not play well today. And there's going to be a game, whether that's Michigan, whether that's Indiana, where Will Howard is going to have to make a play again. And I just don't know if it's there, man. Like, I believe it was Tom Fernelli at CBS Sports who brought up something in his Big Ten column about Ohio State's explosive passing game, and it's been in my head since I read it, that when you look at their explosive pass rate, it's actually pretty good. I think it's above 20%. But when you think of Ohio State and explosive passes, you think of CJ Stroud bombing it downfield to Jackson Smith and Jigba, to Marvin Harrison Jr., to all these guys who are now in the NFL, and for like a 65-yard touchdown. Those plays are not happening right now at the consistent level for Ohio State. The explosive pass, like an explosive pass, is considered above like 20 yards. And so many of the explosive passes right now in this Ohio State offense are 20, 25 yards. The downfield element is not consistent with this offense. And like, that's a Will Howard problem. It's not a Jeremiah Smith and a Mecca Igbukar problem because those guys could rip off 65 yarders if they needed to. I promise you. So like, it is a Will Howard problem. And like, I said coming into the season that the one thing I was curious about with this Ohio State offense is, okay, we saw what Will Howard at Kansas State was. Ohio State is a different animal. Ohio State does not run an offense like Kansas State does. Maybe you incorporate more quarterback run game, but like you're still going to have to like take advantage of these wide receivers. And I haven't to this point against the highest level of competition seen Will Howard do that. And so if there comes a game where Quinshaw Judkins and Travion Henderson are not able to run the ball like they were today against Penn State, what does that look like? And is Indiana and Michigan teams that are going to be capable of stopping that? I think so. Based on like what we know about Michigan's talent on the defensive side of the ball and what we know about Indiana's talent plus coaching staff.
I have some Ohio State thoughts that percolate in the back of my mind here. Two big ones. The first one just came to me. I think they're a better team if Chip Kelly's not he's getting in the way.
Well, I don't know because is the alternative Brian Hartline because I don't think he's a very good offensive mind either.
I mean, if it's the point where like just Ryan Day is calling plays, I'd probably
Yeah.
lose. That was kind of my thought there. Like I'm watching Ohio State. Like I know they've got all sorts of talent. They put so much talent in the portal and everything like that. The receivers, most talented group out there. You get Quinshaw Judkins, and like every time I've watched Ohio State this year, I'm like, I don't really feel like they're winning. I don't feel like they're skull dragging people with the running game, which has kind of been
Yeah.
like shocking to me. In a way, maybe you'll disagree with me. I just feel like they're a tick off of Georgia in just about every spot. Maybe it's like, Howard makes like the dumb plays like Beck does, but like they
Mhm.
somehow get back into it. You're sitting there, it's a frustrating game. You're like, oh my God, Ohio State's gonna blow this thing, and then they get back in there and stuff like that too. Maybe it's not to that degree because SEC is just better top to bottom than the Big Ten, but like there's a lot of similarities between Georgia and Ohio State across the board. So like that's probably the strangest part. Like they're probably going to be both in the top four next year, probably two and three come this time tomorrow or on Tuesday night. Everybody, are we
Mhm.
sure they're good? I don't know.
No, I think they're actually very, very similar to one another. Like, I have a lot of faith in both of those defenses. I think both those defenses are elite. I think both those defenses can stop most teams in the country, especially at this point in the season when there's nothing being held off of film like an Alabama game. So like, I have a lot of faith in both of these defenses against the top level of competition. The offenses I have some questions about. Will Howard, I don't think is that good. Carson Beck, I do think is good, but I don't know if I mean, he has some sort of mental block where he just gets in the quicksand, Keanu Reeves replacement style, and he just lets it snowball. Now, granted, Beck does have an ability to pull himself out of the quicksand, which is a good ability to have, but like he still finds himself in the quicksand every now and then. So like, yeah, there are a lot of mirror images. I think my hot take on Ohio State is despite all of the additions, despite everything that they've done, despite how much S I gave Kyle McCord last year, I think Ohio State was better last year than they are this year.
Yeah, because you saw Marvin Harrison Jr. just making all sorts of plays. McCord wasn't this erratic, I don't think.
No, no, he's a better passer. He just straight up is a better throwing quarterback than Will Howard.
When they had me on Williams, I felt that the running game would just pulverize people. It's not doing the same thing with Judkins here. And I thought about this. You know why Beck's so erratic? Guess who he learned from? The Whoopsie King Master, Stetson Bennett. The
Of
man got
course,
him. The man like got himself out of quicksand like it's Jumanji.
he's just holding on to the vines and swinging, brother.
Hold on to the vines, hold on to the vibes, and this is false start. Last thing we got to talk about because I know we're going a little bit long, but there's a lot to talk about today. A lot
Oh
of
yeah,
interesting wrinkles here. Tennessee. It comes down to Georgia and Vanderbilt, and offensively they looked a little bit better versus Kentucky. Like you said, Nico Iamaleava put his best game this season. Dylan Sampson's playing like a Heisman contender. He probably he'll be a Doak Walker finalist. He won't win it because
yeah,
Ashton Jitty exists
yeah.
on this planet, but like it's just like we're getting to that point where like beyond Georgia and Texas, is it Tennessee? And right now, like maybe, but as soon as every time I say it, my voice goes up. Like I have no idea.
So I think, yeah, Tennessee is definitely like one of the only teams like in the top 25 conversation in the playoff conversation that I like still don't feel like I have a read on like what their ceiling is because like I've been leaving the door open for the opportunity for this offense to kind of like find something. And like you said, they play, or like I said earlier, they played a arguably their best offensive game in SEC play to date tonight against Kentucky. Kentucky's also been really damn terrible recently. So like, what does that actually mean? And what does that look like against Georgia? Like, does Georgia just stonewall them? I don't know. It's possible, but like, I don't know what to make of Tennessee. And like the fact that they're probably going to be the number 6 team in the country come tomorrow afternoon, and we don't know what they are, that's a really weird place to be in.
They have a good defense.
Yeah.
They seem to be well coached on both sides of the ball. They can run the football. I think the SEC's just caught up to Josh Heupel's offense in terms of a passing game. It's so basic. And when you have a first year starter there and a guy who hasn't been in the system that long, like a little bit, there's learning curves or something. It's like he's learning shapes when he should be learning how to write cursive.
It goes into the square hole for sure.
You damn, you're damn right it does. You're absolutely right though. I mean, like they're firmly going to be in our top 12. They're probably going to be ranked 6. I mean, it'll be like
And I don't know if they're any
the,
good. Like I
no,
don't
like
know.
so like going into like next week. So when the playoff does it, like I'm sure like one will be Oregon. Depending on how they'll do it, like they may do it with like seeding too.
Yeah. Well, no, I think they'll do the top 25, just pure like the AP top 25 basically, and
And
then
then
the
seed.
seeding, and then yeah, then they'll seed from there.
Okay, so if it's just top 25, so like you would want to be like Oregon, 2 would probably be like 2, 3 is Georgia, Ohio State, 4 is probably like Texas, 5 is Miami. Then there's Tennessee.
Yeah, like it's a wild place to be in. And like I will push back slightly on the SEC figuring out Josh Heupel's offense. I don't think that's necessarily totally the case. I think that what you said about Nico is spot on. Nico is not sharp in this offense right now. Nico is not sharp as a college football quarterback right now because he still needs to get the reps that he needs to get to that level. But he's also not being helped. This Tennessee wide receiver core is not what it has been in the past few years. Like it's just not. They're not separating at the level that they should be to make this offense run at full effectiveness. If you had guys running open and Nico could hit them, then yes. And I mean, maybe that's an oversimplification of it, but like this offense has worked for so many years that I don't think it's as simple as like SEC figuring it out. I think it's more of a Tennessee problem than it is an SEC issue, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense. I don't know if the SEC's got to figure it out, but we've got to figure it out.
That's
Yes.
right.
This was 3 yards in a cloud of punt here on false start for week 10 of the 2024 college football season. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams at the Sizzle20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. 5-star reviews. Also, we got a shout out today. We got to do one. Kenny liked the show. So Kenny,
Shout out Kenu always. I appreciate the support, brother. You're good peoples.
good people's here. Yeah, welcome back to
Oh,
the
and congratulations on your engagement. I
yes,
forgot to. Yes. So, good vibes all around from Kenu.
yes, absolutely. Hopefully, your fantasy team doesn't choke like the Falcons, like you said in Slack the other day.
Hey, the Falcons aren't going to choke tomorrow. They're about to beat my Cowboys by 100, so it's fine. Nothing says Cowboys vibes quite like bringing back a dinosaur Ezekiel Elliott and having him be a healthy scratch for tomorrow's game for disciplinary reasons. Like, hell yeah, brother, we're thriving.
Just stay in Central Time.
Hate my life.
Well, I don't hate your life or mine, but hate the fact that I got to get up and work tomorrow morning in like 8 hours.
We'll be just rolling on all cylinders.
Rolling on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders. What other option is it? Let's false start.